Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, lovers and seekers, those who are lost and those who are found. Tonight I will be reading from the compilation titled Outlaw Creative, The Geometry of Life. And tonight's reading is titled The Hinge. Let's get started. The hinge a hinge is not a flourish. It is not a transition. It is not a clever turn of phrase. A hinge is a load-bearing joint between two modes of being. Most writing moves forward. A hinge lets writing turn. That distinction matters more than it sounds. What a hinge actually is, a hinge is the moment in a piece where the reader stops being entertained and becomes implicated. The text stops describing and starts addressing. The tone shifts from setup to instruction, or from image to demand. Structurally, a hinge is where the work changes direction without changing location. A door does not travel across the room. It turns on a hinge and suddenly the space is different. That's the effect you're after. That is the hinge. 2. Why hinges exist at all without a hinge? A piece is either all image, beautiful, inert, or all instruction, useful, forgettable. The hinge is what lets you do both without collapsing into sermon or slogan. Human attention works in phases. Curiosity, what is this? Recognition, I see myself in this. Orientation, what do I do with this? Most writing fails because it never earns the third phase, or it jumps there too early. The hinge is the earned pivot between phases 2 and 3. You don't tell the reader what to do. You turn them so they can see what must be done. 3. Hinges are relational, not rhetorical. This is important. A hinge is not about cleverness. It's about relationship. Before the hinge, the text says, "Look at this." After the hinge, the text says, "Now listen." That shift creates risk. The writer exposes intent. The reader can no longer pretend neutrality. That's why bad hinges feel preachy. They demand without earning trust, and why good hinges feel almost gentle, even when the instruction is brutal. Your instinct to place right here, right now, for you after the hinge was correct because it clarifies who the instruction is for. A hinge without an addressee is unstable. 4. The hinge is where voice changes authority. Authority before a hinge is borrowed. Humor style, intelligence, irony, authority after a hinge must be owned. That's why hinge lines are often simple, direct, even blunt. They drop ornament, examples across traditions, but hear me now, so let this be said. Therefore, attend. In your work, it often looks like, hear this and hear it loud, count it good. So, these aren't filler words, they're mechanical levers. 5. Why hinges feel mysterious when unnamed. You said you see the hinge a lot but don't fully get it. That's because hinges often don't carry content. They carry force. If you read them literally, they seem empty. If you remove them, the piece collapses. That's how you know you're dealing with a hinge and not a line. Try this test. Remove the suspected hinge. Read the piece aloud. If the instruction now feels abrupt, moralizing, or cheap, the hinge was doing real work. 6. Hinges and timing. A hinge placed too early feels bossy. A hinge placed too late feels redundant. The right hinge appears at the exact moment when the reader already knows what you were talking about, but does not yet know why it matters to them personally. In Face Off, the hinge works because the absurdity has already disarmed the reader. The off day has already been recognized. The verdict, "'tis always good," has already landed. Only then does the text turn and say, "Now listen." That sequencing is not accidental, it's craft. 7. Hinges are ethical devices. This matters in your work more than most. A hinge is where you decide whether you are manipulating the reader or orienting the reader. Manipulative hinges exaggerate urgency. Ethical hinges clarify stakes. Your hinge doesn't say, "You must do this or else." It says, "If you are here, this will help." That's the difference between command and instruction. 8. Why fragments still need hinges. Even short fragments often have micro hinges. Example, anybody, bruh. Everybody got something to say until it's time to damn say it. The hinge is the line break. The first line asks. The second line judges the silence. That's a hinge in miniature. Fragments without hinges feel aphoristic. Fragments with hinges feel operative. 9. When not to use a hinge. Not every piece needs one. If the goal is atmosphere witness naming, then a hinge can ruin it. Hinges are for pieces that intend to be carried, not just noticed. You've been using them instinctively when the fragment is meant to travel with the reader after reading. That's not an accident. 10. The hinge as moral geometry. Here's the deepest part. A hinge creates direction without coercion. It says, you are free, but here is how the weight actually falls. That's why the hinge feels like wisdom when done right. It respects agency while refusing vagueness. The negative space is part of the text. The hinge lives in that negative space. It's the silence that turns the door. In plain terms, if you strip all the philosophy away, a hinge is this, the moment when the piece stops showing off and starts standing for something. You already know how to write them. Now you know what they are. And once you see them clearly, you'll never accidentally place one again. You'll choose them.